Hello guys and gals, and welcome back to our continuing train ride down the Mario franchise land of sunshine and happiness. And in earlier videos on this channel, we saw that early on in the Mario franchise, the creators have been making a bunch of attempts to try and diversify the brand and reach out to new audiences that they haven't before. A lot of those early ideas flopped pretty damn hard, but like when Nintendo tried to breathe new life into their old Super Mario Bros. IP to create the absolute train wreck known as New Super Mario Bros., Nintendo had also went back to the original game in the series and brought back the original Donkey Kong vs. Mario conflict to create the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, starting out life on the GBA of all places. You would think that was such a simple premise as Mario climbing a construction site to save his girlfriend that there would be no way to screw that up. And Nintendo pulled out all the stops to prove those people wrong with one of the dumbest premises I've ever heard of since Call of Duty Ghosts. The deal here is that the game starts with Donkey Kong watching television and channel flipping until he finds a commercial for Mini Mario toys and immediately falls in love with them and has to buy them all for some odd reason. I bet this is what Activision Blizzard and EA legitimately believes its consumers act like. So, DK runs to the toy store and finds out that it's sold out of the toys he wanted, even though it was being advertised directly on TV right at that time. And this is the only toy store stocking the Mini Mario toys, so because this video game needs to exist, rather than admitting defeat and waiting 3 days for more to come in, Donkey Kong goes to the toy manufacturing plants across the damn street and begins stealing all the Mini Mario toys, and as he leaves the plant, Mario is there because why the hell not, and begins chasing DK across 6 worlds of silly puzzling shenanigans. Okay, first question, why would the plant be across the street from the only toy store it has selling its toys when selling them directly from the plant would eliminate thousands of costs to do what they're doing now? And why the hell would the constantly busy Mario be at the company manufacturing his own toy line? Was he having a contract dispute with the plant owner, or is this a kid's puzzle game for the GBA and I shouldn't be taking any of this seriously even though these cutscenes took apparently tons of time and effort to be developed and they're this terrible? You could have started all this at the menu screen and it would have worked just damned well fine. In Mario vs. Donkey Kong, there doesn't actually have to be a reason for Mario to be fighting DK, especially if the reason you went with makes him look like a petty douche. Nintendo literally blew the entire cutscene budget on this and the ending cutscene, and even though they only had the cartridge space to make 2 cutscenes, they are still 2 PowerPoint presentations with 0 animation work. What was the cartridge size of this thing, 1 meg? The game has no other cutscenes, so I don't know why they bothered having these 2 take up so much storage space, if the game's not going to bother being story-driven, or even have its story make any freaking sense. The game doesn't need it, so it's just wasted development time that could have been spent on making more puzzles or making the existing puzzles more interesting. The main part of the game's 6 worlds is that Mario has to go through a single screen platform puzzler to first grab a key to move to the next puzzle, and then collect a Mini Mario to be used for the boss level of that world. Each world has 6 levels with 2 parts, and a Mini Mario collection level, and then a boss fight. So there's technically 13 puzzles per world, and you can beat a lot of them in just a minute. The game also pulls elements from the original Donkey Kong for the puzzles in this game. The girder level design, the hammers, barrels, and the fire barrels make an appearance along with a bunch of other enemies and movement skills from Mario's other games, which ends up giving you a good suite of tools to use multiple strategies to complete those puzzles and get the collectibles just like any good puzzle platformer. But like most of the other Mario games, the collectibles are completionist fodder and completely pointless to the game itself's progression. Maybe you get some new levels. I don't actually care for stupid collectibles put in Mario games for optional difficulty spikes. The boss fights with DK are decent enough and are built more like puzzles instead of combat encounters that use the mechanics of the game itself, so you don't end up being annoyed by fighting DK in Dance Dance Revolution or in some other completely unrelated minigame. The game is pretty simple with a few basic controls and gameplay ideas with a more advanced setup for people who want it, but it's not necessarily required to get through the whole game. It's a chill out game and not something super stressful. However, like Captain Toad's game, it ran into the same problem. The game's plotline is moronically flimsy and the game is just too damn short. Like I said earlier in the video, the entire point of the game is to stop DK from stealing toys and nothing else, which isn't funny enough to entertain the player through 70 odd puzzles to complete, and there you go. The game is only 6 worlds long with 13 puzzles apiece, and since a lot of those puzzles can be completed in under 100 seconds, if you aren't collectible hunting, you can finish it in 3 to 4 hours to hit the credits. The game does at least go out of its way to have something of a climactic final boss, but it's not exactly hard to get your head around, and it's built like a Mario boss, which means that 3 hits can break it apart in under 2 minutes, no fuss, no sweat. Frankly, the game does have additional levels after that in quote-unquote New Game Plus, but the puzzles are not down to 6 per world instead, and all the bosses are copy-pasted, so even then, it'll probably only tack on another 2 hours to hit the runtime, which isn't great to get a 5-hour runtime out of a GBA game, especially when the game hit the credits by the 3.5-hour mark. I don't know how in the hell this game launched a long-standing puzzle spin-off series in the franchise with just how slapdash the original was developed, but I'm guessing that these puzzle-centric, no-plot games are just easy to make and don't cost all that much when they're also made handheld exclusives. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a flimsy, lacking in content puzzle platformer with no plot, no character work, no arcs, and not much variety, leaving you with some repetitive, mostly baby easy puzzles that can barely put up the runtime to even count as a time sink. When I see handheld games like this, I remember that at one time at one place, Nintendo had the absolute nerve to stick this on a shelf and sell it for launch day prices. And that's mostly why I find these substandard puzzle games insulting. If the game's puzzles had some variety or at least some context to why we were doing the puzzles to flesh things out like Limbo does, for example, then you would have something that people would want to play, but unfortunately Nintendo went the cheap route and jerry-rigged 2 PowerPoint cutscenes and attached them to a bunch of bargain basement puzzles you could find better done in browser games that only serve as a quick waste of time. Yet back in the 2000s, somehow this game was quality enough to be sold to Game Boy owners for tens of dollars. This thing is a cheap-ass cash grab that isn't even worth the 2 seconds it would take to download and emulate it. My recommendation is to stay far away from this game, but considering this was somehow good enough to produce 5 sequels at minimum, maybe Nintendo will make the series good again later down the line, but for now, I'll just put up the scoreboard and wish you all out there a victory for gamers. Thanks for tuning in.